computer. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Master Phil in Your Corner. This is episode number 132, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce a gentleman who is he's been on the short list for a long time. I've wanted to get him on here. We're just trying to make things jive, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Zach Evanesh of the Underground Gym. And Zach has been training a lot of wrestlers, and of course that's near and dear to my heart, as well as many other athletes, very successfully at his facility down in South Jersey. And we're going to talk about some of the things that revolve around sport-specific training, overtraining, general strength. Zach, welcome.
Bill, thank you, my bro. Crazy schedules finally lined up. Had to do it early in the morning.
Yeah, and as most people know, we've already probably been up for a couple hours. I know I have, and I know you have as well.
5:30 is usually my normal wake up, sometimes a
There
little
you go.
bit earlier. Yep.
Yeah,
I like to wake up. I've always said, get up before the dogs want to get off their couch.
yeah, yeah. My dog, she was sleeping in her bed by the foot of our bed.
Uh-huh.
And, of course I get up and then she'll start moving eventually. But so it's funny. Tell people a little bit about your background and what you've been doing. I know you've had some great success training a multitude of athletes, but we met primarily because of the wrestling connection.
Yeah. Well, also, you were probably one of those early guys in the world of kettlebell training,
Yes.
which when I started getting into strength and conditioning, it was about not a little bit less than a year after I had an ACL repair.
Mm.
So I'm 49 and a half, and that was about 22 or 23 years ago. So in the
Yeah.
early 2000s,
I was. Yep.
yep, those early 2000s, my early influences, I always say I was lucky, or maybe we were lucky because there wasn't so much distracting noise. If there was bad information, you were called out for it. Nobody was attracted to the circus tricks, so to
Yeah.
speak. And so what I did was during the rehab, I remember saying to myself, I gotta learn who who and how the best wrestlers in the world are training. And
Mm.
back then it was the Russians. And today, it's still a lot of those Russian states. Japan, I think, won the most medals in the recent Olympics with wrestling.
Mhm.
And America catching up, but I still think like system wise a lot of times these other countries they just have a better overall training system, whereas in America everybody just keeps jumping from one thing to the next. And so luckily for me, Elite FTS had constant articles and education and a lot of articles by Louis Simmons. And so I started reading a ton about Louis Simmons, and he would talk about training combat athletes. I would call him on the regular and speak about training wrestlers. Where he was in Ohio, such a hotbed. And then with kettlebells, Dragon Door was like the only place back then to get
Mhm.
kettlebells. A couple of companies would pop up here and there, but they wouldn't stay in business. And so I remember my first DVD was Mike Mahler's. It's
Yeah.
like aggressive strength training for the combat athlete, and everything was double kettlebell training. And I
Mhm.
bought my first pair of kettlebells from a guy up in North Jersey. I think Steve Freitas was his
Greetings.
name.
Yep. I know
What?
Steve very well. Yeah, he
Yeah,
used to
of
come to my
course.
gym all the time. Yeah.
Great guy. I
Yeah.
remember picking up two pairs of kettlebells from his
Mhm.
house in North Jersey on like a freezing cold winter night. And it was a pair of 53s and a pair of 70s.
Yeah.
And I had never touched kettlebells before. I had watched the DVD of Mike, so that was how I learned by
Mhm.
watching this DVD over and over again.
Mhm.
And I remember Steve had like this RKC discount. So I remember it costed me $550 to buy two pairs of kettlebells.
Yeah.
And all I thought to myself was, "Oh my God, I just spent I spent over $5,000
Yeah.
on this equipment and I don't have money." And I was, a year out from getting married and we're rebuilding this house and all this. And I remember farmer walking the 53s from
Hmm.
his porch to my car. And I had done dumbbell farmer walks and was kind of making my own equipment. Back then, you didn't have companies making
Nope.
sandbags, everything was homemade. And I
Yep.
remember carrying those 53s, Phil, and saying to myself, whoa, these feel friggin' heavy.
Hmm.
Maybe I never should have bought the 70s. I was like, it's too late. I'm
Yeah.
doing it. And
Yeah.
so I remember putting those 53s and 70s in the back of my truck and like trying to like organize them so they wouldn't roll
Hmm.
all over the place.
Hmm.
And I take them to our house that was being rebuilt. And so we had bought a house, had to gut it out. But the first thing we rebuilt and revamped was the garage because
Yeah.
that's where I would begin training athletes. So I remember opening the garage door and it's like bare cinder blocks. And I must have had like 20 pairs of old York and Ivanko plates.
Yeah.
I didn't have a squat rack yet. I didn't have any equipment, but I had these plates and I had those kettlebells. And I got home and it was like 9:30 at night, 9:45 at night, and we weren't living in the house. But I remember bringing the kettlebells in and like putting myself through the workouts that Mike had on that DVD.
Yeah.
And man, I got killed because normally when you're learning to use kettlebells, most men, well, they said, remember back then also, Phil, people don't realize there was three kettlebells,
Yep.
35, 53, 70.
Boom.
You didn't have these in between weights to learn.
Nope.
And so also Mike's video was double kettlebells. Normally you want to learn with a single kettlebell. I remember kicking my ass, my own ass. Like Mike had these 10 exercises as a
Yeah.
circuit, like
Yeah.
renegade man makers, thrusters, all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this is the feeling.
Yep.
Because what was I doing leading up to my injury? Bodybuilding, and then I started learning a bit about like the golden era bodybuilders who incorporated powerlifting, but I
Strength
was still
training.
getting hurt a lot
Yep.
competing in grappling. Back then, they didn't even call it jujitsu. I was just training and
Yep.
competing in grappling. So that was my beginning. And then in 2007, started the first warehouse of the underground strength gym.
Hmm.
So I was in my garage for 4 years, '03 till '07. And then in that time period, multiple locations, multiple consulting opportunities and experiences with guys that you know, like Marty Gallagher.
Good
Um,
friends of Marty. Yeah.
Marty's amazing, and also coached, as you said, like strength and conditioning wrestlers in
Hmm.
the collegiate level. I was at Lehigh, I was at Rutgers,
Hmm.
but basically ever since '03 and really '02, I
Hmm.
started out of my parents' garage training local kids in the neighborhood. So
Yeah.
close to 25 years now of being in the private sector. And we don't train as many wrestlers as we once did. And it's interesting, had a conversation with two of my friends and they said, about 10 years ago, strength training became a little bit less on the totem pole of importance for wrestlers. It
Yeah.
became like wrestling, 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 number one, right? I'm going to go to high school wrestling practice. Then I will go to high school. Then I'll go to my wrestling
Club.
club. Then I'm going to this other quote unquote special guy. I'm going to get my private wrestling.
Yeah.
So they wrestle a lot more. And then you see like this like flexibility, conditioning thing. And then number three is strength. And 2 days ago, I was at down here in the Jersey Shore. They'd call it the summer duels, where
Yeah.
a school will host once a week for
Hmm.
like 4 weeks. Um, just tons of mats. Every kid gets 2 to 3 matches. So there was a few hundred wrestlers there. And I said, well, it's still the same. The kid that is strong and jacked is beating the kid that is not. And
Yep.
like we could pretend that there's all these other fancy things you can do
Yeah. Yeah.
that you want to copy on Instagram and whatever,
Hmm.
wherever else. But the kids that were strong and jacked were winning,
Hmm.
9 out of 10 matches.
Well,
And then I'm also seeing in sport, uh, the I didn't see amazing wrestling at the summer duels because right
mhm.
now is Fargo the national
Right.
tournament, so that's where the best kids are.
Hmm.
But I'm seeing this kind of removal. A friend of mine said it, Coach Nick Coco. He said it great. I said, there's no like middle ground of athletes anymore. I've noticed they're like way at the bottom or they're elite, where we're seeing
Yes.
high school kids beating Olympians or
Right.
beating
World champs.
world champs. And he said, it's like the economy. It's like the removal of the middle class. I said, oh my God, that's
Yeah.
exactly correct. but I
Yeah.
also see more injuries
Yep.
that require surgery and a lot more
Mhm.
burnout, mental burnout,
Yep.
just physically exhausted from the excessive amount of training rather than, quality training. And
Yep.
so it's even impacted the business where, I used to say, Phil, I'm like, I'm never training adults. Like, I don't want to train adults. I train athletes,
Yeah.
but I'm creeping up on each 50. And I started realizing, like, I thought this is normal activity for men to be able to do pull ups and push ups and running and deadlifting. And I got to a point where I looked around and I said, man, I got to make a change and we got to do something for the business because also our athletes, they come and go much more, Phil. Whereas back in, I always say that the popularity of the iPhone is when I began to see a decline in, I'd say, like consistent type positive behaviors with athletes.
Mhm.
So before the iPhone or maybe up till 2015, we would see athletes, they would train with us from like seventh grade until they had to leave for college. Now they're here a few months, they're gone. I'm too busy. I can't do this. I'm on two travel teams. I'm going here, there. And look, we do have time, probably spending too much time sitting on your phone, but they're just exhausted from all these
Yep.
practices.
Mhm.
Too
You know
much
what?
stuff going on.
You hit the nail on the head. Actually, you hit several nails on several heads here, and a lot of the same stuff that I've seen. Now, I'm a little bit older than you. I'll actually be 63 in October.
Nice.
So,
Looking young. I always,
hey, baby.
training is the fountain of youth.
Boom.
You're 63, but if I'm looking at you, you look like a guy who's in his early 40s.
Well,
It just
thank you.
shows you the power of fitness.
That is consistency, and that's what I preach. And the other thing is that what even though right now I am training some high level athletes, but my bread and butter is the older people, And the other thing is they have disposable income, which is nice. So, yeah, I just I don't know if I've been working with one guy exclusively for the past 6 weeks. Nick Siriano's been
Of
training with me.
course.
Yeah, and so we're using. You're talking about the strength and the conditioning and stuff, and the what putting forth with the barbell method. He's eating it up, and it's very restorative because we do have the flexibility and mobility as well as obviously the strength component to it. And then I have a guy who just signed with Boston with the Boston Buffalo Sabres. Hockey team. I trained him years ago, but now he's got a contract, and so we're working on some techniques and so forth. But most of them are my guys in their 50s, 60s. I even got a guy 74 years old. You ready for this?
Yeah.
74. I got him doing Turkish get-ups. He's been training with me a year. A year. He's put on 7 pounds of muscle. The guy, he goes, I'm in love with kettlebells now.
Yeah.
Because I trained him years and years ago, but then he was in Jersey. He's a big time attorney. And then I moved
Hmm.
back up to the area. And so we started training again. We hadn't trained in like 20 years. And
Wow.
then, yeah. And then we started training again. And he is completely in love with the program. Hey, he's 160 something pounds. He's swinging that 53-pound kettlebell for sets of 10.
Yeah.
74 years old. Dude, come on. That's ridiculous, right?
What's your when you mentioned like the muscle, how are you tracking that? Do you do an in body?
Yes, InBody. Yeah, I think that's a great tool.
Yeah.
An
How
InBody.
did you
Yeah,
buy those things are
I
like
didn't buy
20
it.
grand.
I'm a college professor. We can go use the one at the college.
I didn't know you
So,
were a college professor.
oh yeah, yeah.
Where are you teaching at?
I'm at Bergen Community College.
Nice.
Yeah, I've
You know
been
what's
here for
it
8 years. Yeah.
see, I used to in my early years of getting my when I got my master's degree, I taught at Middlesex County College,
Mhm.
and it's so like I had a exercise class, so we would
Mhm.
teach it, and then we would go into the weight room. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think to myself, man, like I want to get back into that college sector because
Mhm.
it's so raw.
Yeah.
People underestimate it. And I really, as an athlete, what I should have done after wrestling in high school is gone to Middlesex County College, where Coach John Sachi was coaching wrestling.
Yeah.
Today you have seniors in high school who are 19. I was a 19-year-old junior in college,
Me
right?
too.
But it's just
I was 17 in college.
yeah, I graduated high school. See, that was normal.
Yeah.
So things have certainly changed. I want to ask you, Phil, because
Mhm.
I am kind of getting back to the training I did a little bit more so 20 years ago, meaning um, I'm getting back to using more sandbags, more
Mhm.
kettlebells. And when I get away from kettlebells, I lose my trunk mobility, the ability to twist, my spine gets stiff. I feel a little bit less athletic.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I want to talk about the one guy you're training who's in his early 70s or 74,
Yep.
and you haven't seen him for a while. What is the beginning kind of like system that you reintroduce somebody like that to
Sure.
exercise?
Well, first of all, first thing I did with them was I have a bow staff. Okay, and they do these. There's 13 movements I do with a staff. Matter of fact,
What's a bow staff? What is that?
like just a staff. I'm actually coming out with a new product called the Back Better Bar, and
Okay.
it's collapsible and you can take it with you. So that's actually made available shortly. I just placed the order for the first run, and I it's it's a 5 foot pole,
Yep.
and I do a bunch of exercises with that, and that gets the mobility going. Actually, I'll tell you, Zach, I've been doing this routine every morning, every day. I do it at least once for over 30 years to help with my mobility.
Who
And
inspired it in you? Who mentored you in that way, Phil?
actually, I have to blame myself.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was my junior year in high school, I was playing. I played football, wrestling, track, and I got speared in football. I broke 3 bones in my back, missed my whole junior year. All sports done. Um, and I went to a chiropractor. And I remember this is 1977.
Hmm.
Okay. So 78, I found this chiropractor. I didn't know what it was at first. And he showed me these movements. He showed me some movements. And the way it is, I built off of that. And then I also worked on special shoulder specialties. I went to a couple different certifications for that, figuring out how the shoulder works. And it's really where I came up with the whole thing about the rhomboids, squeezing those rhomboids, because that helps your shoulders as well as your back. Because if you squeeze your rhomboids together and bend forward, you're not going to bend your low back. It remains straight. Your lumbar spine
Yes.
stays straight. So, and then of course, if you pack your shoulders, engage your lats, that protects your shoulders. I actually have it on the back of my shirts. Say neutral spine all the time, pack the shoulders, engage the lats, squeeze the rhomboids, tighten the butt, tighten the gut, creating that cylinder of power. So that's how I start with them. Then the other thing I did with them was that most people don't squat, especially after a certain age. So what I did was I did like the what do you call it, the deficit squat, where you had him hold on to either a TRX or a pole
Sure.
and get his feet close and go full range of motion on the squat. And then for the upper body, and actually also the thoracic region and the shoulders, I did the kettlebell armbar.
Yeah.
That,
Uh,
oh my God, everyone loves that move.
who taught? I remember seeing Jeff Martone
Yeah,
doing that way back in the day.
yeah, I did it at my first RKC certification.
When did you do your RKC cert?
I got my first cert level one in 2007.
Oh, back then, people don't know like it
They
was
don't
a
know, it was rough.
friggin' it was friggin' hard. And so
Yeah.
I remember for some I just never it was only done in Minnesota.
Yep. I went to Minnesota and then I immediately I did pretty well in it. And then I immediately took the RKC2 a few months later.
Very tough. Even
Yeah.
tougher.
Oh, and 60% of the people failed it, and I was definitely the oldest one there. 60%
Really?
failed. Yeah.
Around what year was that? Oh
This
nine
was
or 20?
2008.
What's so interesting, Phil, is the if I look at the RKC cert, I remember the men's test was a 53-pound kettlebell snatch. How many reps did you have to do
I
without
had it
switching?
without switching. You had to do 64 reps,
32 each arm
32 each
in a
arm
row,
in a
not
row.
switch.
No.
And then, of course, years later, you could switch, you can put it down. There's this. And see, we've done that with sports, we've done that in life. And as soon as you
Yeah.
drop that standard, and make things easier for people, we are less challenged.
Yep.
And so that you saying 60% of people failed, the
Hmm.
reality is today, that's a quote unquote bad business model
Right.
because people are
Right.
going to be like, forget it, it's
Yep.
too hard. But
Yep.
in those early 2000s, Phil, people were attracted to
Yes.
the difficulty of things. And I got to say, the early days of CrossFit was also good because it
Right.
was it was a garage based
Hmm.
system. You had a barbell, you had one kettlebell, usually a homemade sandbag, and a pair of rings, and
Pull-up
then
bar.
you
Yeah.
had some sort of a like an outdoor activity, kayak, canoe,
Hmm.
mountain bike. And everything was, I think the programming was not so insane, right? Like I
Yes.
might do
Yes.
5 sets of 5 on a barbell, and then I might have to do 100 swings, or it
Hmm.
just wasn't as crazy. I thought it was a little bit, though. I feel like that was the golden era of strength and conditioning. And today, yeah, there's a lot more technology and it's more intelligent. But I mean, I'm just
Is it? Wait, wait. Is it more intelligent?
well, meaning like it's more, hey, we're measuring everything. But I feel
Okay.
like the
Let me
the
tell you
freaks
something.
are the freaks
Yeah.
are the freaks no matter
Right.
what. But I feel that with that technology, the coaches, they're so busy looking at a monitor or dashboard, they're missing, hey, your back
Thank
wasn't
you.
flat, or
Thank
hey,
you.
um,
Thank you.
you moved the
Yep.
bar fast, but you actually didn't squat all the way down. But they don't understand
Hmm.
the those details that to me are crucial. So the coach's eye has lessened.
Yes. This is something that I really like take to heart. Um, because you have people who are paying attention way too much to the biometrics. And are you looking at a screen? You're looking at your phone, or are you paying attention how your body feels? I go into the woods for my road work. I won't run on the street. I run in the woods. I sprint on the grass and the trails. I don't have headset on. I don't have
Yes.
anything on. I honestly I don't wear any of the. I don't have any of the wearable technology either. I want to feel how my body is performing. I want to pay attention to what's going on inside of me because I look at this as an intrinsic level. Training is intrinsic. I don't even have mirrors up in my gym. Why? Pay attention to your body. When I was training kettlebells, I was trained out in a field. I'll tell you, my first snatch test, I didn't know how to snatch. So here I walk into this thing.
Really?
I bought the Steve Cotter
Yes.
book and video set, and I had these clunky old power systems bells to practice with.
There was
And
some very crappy made
yeah,
kettlebells
well,
back then.
I'm also good. There's still crappy ones out today, and I'm going to expand on that a little bit too. Uh, Now I go out there, and it's in Minnesota or outside. I didn't know it was going to be outside. I'm in a tank top. It's like 42 degrees.
Oh yeah,
And,
cold
oh
out
yeah,
there.
yeah. And I'm doing the snatch, and so I do 32 on one side, switch to the other side. 63, I go up. 64, put it down. My hand came up without the bell on the last rep.
Hmm.
Zach, I was fuming pissed. I was fuming pissed. So, and I found out I horsed it the whole time. And so somebody stayed after and showed me how to do it right. And I was just determined. I couldn't even sleep that night. I was so like mad. I come in the next day. I go, give me that thing. And Thomas Phillips
I
was my
remember
judge.
him.
Yeah, and
He's a Jersey guy.
yeah, Jersey guy.
He had he was did the transformate
Hmm.
body for life. I'm not sure if he has the gym anymore, but I've
Yeah, I think.
done tactical. I did my tactical strength challenge at his gym
Oh, cool.
over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Phil.
So he's testing me, right? And then I think I wound up, he's like, okay, you're good, you're good. I'm like, I kept going. I think I did like 72. I was so pissed. Because that was like that was for the next weight class. I was, like 180s. So it was
Yes.
for the highest weight class, which was 72, but I didn't want to stop. So he's like, okay, you're good, you're good, you're good. And I just kept going because I was mad that I failed the first time.
That test broke
Oh,
people.
oh yeah, yeah. I
Oh my
mean,
God,
people
Phil.
would just leave. I'd go there day one. Day one it was day one. You walk in, you get tested.
Yeah.
Next day, half the people would be gone. They would just go. Then, we were talking about the different kettlebells, and you said that there's some crappy ones out there. You have to remember
Yeah.
that Dragon Door bells were designed by people who lift kettlebells. All these
Hmm.
other ones are made by people who are equipment manufacturers. That's why
That's right.
people seem to forget that. And there's not that much difference in the price in them, especially the shipping is the killer. But the Dragon Door bells, I mean, I've had some of my bells for 20 years now.
Yeah.
And I got rid of the other ones because they're
I still have my first pair of that first my first pairs, and I always say, okay, back then it was 550 bucks. The
yeah.
cost of manufacturing is much less. You could buy a kettlebell on Amazon and get free shipping.
Hmm.
This was unheard of
Yes,
back then.
yes,
You really were the money was something really
yeah.
on your mind.
I think
You're making me remember some old companies like my buddy Jason C. Brown may have done
Mhm.
that kettlebell
Yeah,
cert around your
yeah.
time,
Hmm.
maybe a
Hmm.
little earlier, but I remember
I
Iron
remember him.
Woody was a company
Oh
making
wow.
kettlebells
Yeah,
with
yeah,
like
yeah,
a square handle.
yeah,
Now, that being said, some of the kettlebells were quote unquote crappy.
yeah.
Sometimes I like equipment that's not perfectly made
Hmm.
because it makes you strong in these imperfect
Hmm.
positions. Although I'm not saying it's unsafe, that's what we
Yeah.
don't want. But I
No.
found the same thing about um, like squat racks and whatnot.
Hmm.
So I bought my first squat rack from Sornex in 2003, and I
Hmm.
always said Sornex, Elite FTS. When I'm using their equipment, I know it was built by people who lift and are thinking, hey, hey, the height of this makes no sense. We
Right.
are never would, so that's also super important. And just
Hmm.
the the density of the people we learned from, because there
Right.
wasn't the freedom to post your information. You really had to learn from people who are experts, like
Right.
you mentioned Steve Cotter,
Hmm.
who passed away recently.
Yeah.
Steve had that martial arts background. I don't
Yes.
know what style it was, but it was
I
like a
think it.
boxing and
Yeah.
judo.
He had some. I think he had some Japanese karate as well. It's
Yep,
he and I, knew each other. Not
of
super well,
course.
but
Right. Martial
we can.
artists
Yeah.
kind of, bring the minds together. And listening to you also, with your arts background, Phil, I've said,
Mhm.
we're talking about strength training. I think there's a parallel in also martial arts. I've noticed like martial arts schools, you have 8-year-olds with black belts.
Makes me
That
sick.
never would have happened
No.
decades ago. There was an honor to
Yeah.
it. And I'd have to look up the name. Of course, I'm drawing a blank, but I love doing research on a lot of the older, um, physical culture type
Hmm.
lifters and strongmen and wrestlers. Same thing in martial arts. There was the one guy who like retreated to the mountains. I wrote an article about it because I have so many books here. I had bought
Yeah.
a book and magazine, and he's like shown he went to the like mountains in Japan
Hmm.
to train, and he would spend time like every day going in the cold water,
Right. Right. Right.
lifting stones, running, but the volume of training was amazing. And of course, what will we say today? That's too much. That's not optimal. But Louis Simmons also was influenced by martial arts, and he
Hmm.
had heard a quote by I don't know who saying, to master martial arts, the training must be severe or the training must be extreme. And we're so afraid to go down that road now.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
always trying to balance everything. But if I want to have a high level performance as an athlete, then
Hmm.
I'm not going to have a balance. I'm going to be taking things to extreme. When I'm an adult, then I'm a little bit more balanced, family, work, fitness. So it's interesting to see how kind of things were RKC test, intense, no
Yep.
one hand switch, only use this kettlebell. Like
Yeah.
and majority people failing.
Hmm.
Now
Yeah.
you can't do that because
No.
if it's too hard, that's not good business almost.
It'll come out. Somebody will post about it, or it'll be
Yes.
on Instagram, and no one will come
Right.
to you anymore because they're afraid. Where the funny thing was that we come from a different mindset. To me, when I see people failing, I'm like, I want to do that.
Hmm.
I mean, now these kids, oh gosh, I can't win. I'm not going to do it. It's like, man, like challenge me. This is what I love. The one thing you brought up, I want to address this is these amount of repetitive stress injuries that we see in these young athletes because maybe they're wrestling too much, maybe they're
Yeah.
throwing a baseball too much, maybe they're
Oh, yeah.
on the soccer pitch too much, as opposed to having some true general physical
Oh yeah.
preparedness.
GPP.
They have to get stronger. And I'll tell you, the other thing is that really gets my goat and is this sports specific training. How many
Yes.
kids need sports specific training? Really? That is maybe for Olympic level, highest level athletes, highest level to work on
E-
something specific. You got a kid. If you can't do push-ups, sit-ups, squats, bridges, handstands, like why are you doing sport specific training? Why are you putting your this foot forward and pulling the hand this way? It's like
People
garbage.
don't know. What's interesting, Phil, is I wrongly assumed that with this abundance of information, people would have greater knowledge. And so I've been a strength coach at a high school. This is going to be my eighth year. So I started
Yeah,
like a year before COVID.
yeah.
And I remember saying, oh, these kids are probably going to really know how to train. These baseball players will have watched Eric Cressy. These football players would have watched all of Elliot Hulse's strength training videos. And I walked into a weight room and kids would bench until they would almost decapitate themselves.
Oh,
Then they would do curls for like 30 minutes and nobody did any leg work. And I was like, what is going on here?
yeah.
I thought all this information meant people knew stuff. Today, the athletes are more influenced by the bodybuilders, Sam Sulek, Chris Bumstead. And, I got to explain to them, hey, guys, those guys are on more drugs than a racehorse. And that's
Yeah.
just not, it's
Well,
great to aspire to have a great
mhm,
physique. But I tell them, if you train bodybuilding, you have a great physique, but you don't get great performance. If you train for performance, you get great physique and great performance.
right.
And so we try to blend that together.
Mhm,
And some of the kids, talking about how weak they are, is I feel like some of them need to train with somebody like you or I, and then 1 or 2 days a week, go to a bodybuilding gym and do a bunch of machines and build muscle because you have no muscle.
mhm.
You're showing up in high school unable to do 10 proper push-ups. You can't do one pull-up. And so they just need bodybuilding training. And I've just
Mhm,
found that our whole like training
mhm,
has had to adjust or adapt to the kind of person that shows up. So yesterday, one of the guys was doing personal training with one of my coaches.
mhm.
We trained his brother, and his brother came to us in college, midway
Mhm.
through college, was
Yeah.
a track athlete, but in high school did track, lacrosse, hockey.
Mhm.
And he's like, man, what? Jimmy said you like broke him when he was like training here doing like all the sandbag stuff. I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, because back when he showed up, most kids showed up, they were fit. They did have an element of toughness. So we would do things like sandbag shouldering, we would do
Mhm.
chain
Mhm.
push-ups.
Mhm.
Chain push-ups today, we can't do because the kids cannot do push-ups. And
Yeah.
so our training has to adapt and we're meeting them at this like lower level and we have to build them up, but also the mentality of like what you said, oh, that thing's hard, somebody's failing on it, I want to do it.
Yeah.
That now is, the outreach conversations I get, Phil, are, hey, we're waiting until baseball season is over. Why? They're on 3 travel teams. Hey, I'm waiting for lacrosse to end because I'm 12 years old and every weekend I'm in Pennsylvania and Maryland and Delaware and I'm traveling every weekend. They
Yeah.
don't have the time to, they're literally running out of time to
Yep.
do it. Whereas that was not happening 10 years ago. And
No.
so what we're seeing is a higher level of sports skill, but a really lower level of general physical preparation, which impedes, as you know, their sports performance. But
Yeah.
parents, I tell you, Phil, nobody's calling me saying, um, my son needs general physical preparation. My son needs to get strong.
Right.
This is what they always ask. My kid needs more speed and agility and more core strength. What the F is
Is core strength.
core? It's
You don't even know.
such a,
Tell them what is core. Oh, abs? No. First of all, it's a whole
they don't
joint. They
understand it.
don't understand it. They don't understand that they have to work the posterior chain. They don't understand they have to work all the intrinsic, all the support muscles. They don't
Yes.
have to understand they need to have a full range of motion. They need to have strength through the full range of motion. These people are looking also at the bodybuilders are looking at the different muscles as opposed to looking at movements. You want strength. Are you an athlete or are you a bodybuilder? Okay, well, take your choice. But listen, I was a competitive bodybuilder.
That's right.
I actually was even an elite power lifter. I got out of all that stuff because to get to the next level, I had to be juiced out of my mind. And I wasn't going to do it, so I just focused on my combat sports. But I look at 179.9 pounds. I did 1,400 pound total in a competition. Not too bad for someone not doing anything, no sauce, 100% raw, natural, competing against guys who were,
Right.
doing it. But I got out of it, and I realized that I have to do something different. And before I got into kettlebells, I was pretty beat up. I'm telling you, from all the heavy lifting, the combat sports,
It
and
takes a toll on
it
your
really
body.
does. And
Yeah.
and after doing it for 5 years, I wound up winning the Battle of the Beach in jiu-jitsu grappling
Hmm.
tournament in '05.
The one in what is it, in
Wildwood, yeah,
Wildwood?
big one,
Yeah, they
yeah,
still do that
yeah, yeah,
for wrestling. Yeah.
yeah. I did that in 2010. I was
Okay.
48, and I had 5 fights, and nobody scored a point on me. And that's after doing 5 years of kettlebells, with
Yeah.
two divisions. I did the young guys division too.
Mm.
I want to go. I want to go against these young guys. Me fighting old guys wasn't
Who,
fair. I didn't think.
Phil, who was your early martial arts instructor? What
Oh
style of, and how did that happen?
okay. Well, I first started with boxing. My
Mm.
grandfather was a boxing trainer, and I actually did a little boxing out of Costello's and Patterson. So we used to live in Fairlawn, and I used to live with my grandparents, and he started me boxing, a little
My
kid. But
father-in-law grew up in Fairlawn.
oh yeah, where?
I'm not sure where, but every time he says Fairlawn, I think of the Mako family. My
Yeah,
father-in-law's
yeah.
last name is Parton, Parton, and then so my father-in-law's in his mid 70s.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But interesting, the North Jersey had a lot of boxing,
yes.
Central Jersey also martial arts,
Hmm.
real martial
Like
arts.
Buddy Amato, Gary. Oh God,
Or Jerry
huh?
Cooney.
Uh,
Uh,
no, I'm thinking about. Oh God, I'm looking at him right now. He's a Marine. Fought one in Japan. Uh, Gary. Oh God,
Gary Alexander.
Gary Alexander. That's
He
his name.
was
I used
in
to compete in his
Edison.
turn. Yeah,
He was in Edison where we lived. And I
huh,
remember my brother signed
yeah.
up to train with him.
He
And
was
it was
hardcore.
exactly. And so I've written some articles about him. There's some old like newspaper clippings.
Yeah.
The mystique behind it, Phil, was Gary Alexander trains in his gi and his combat boots. He was a
Yep.
Vietnam veteran. And you're going to do push-ups on your knuckles.
Yeah.
So my older brother, when he heard that, somebody like me, I was scared. What does my brother do? Save money and sign up to
Yep.
train me. He went, into it. So
Yeah.
Gary Alexander
Yep.
was in Edison in
Hmm.
our downtown area, which is now it's not such a good area
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. But he was man. I used to fight in his tournaments too. But and then
It's funny.
I was at University of Maryland, and I wrestled only 2 years in college. Um, yeah, due to injury, and then I just got too big. Again, remember we started college when we were young,
Yes.
so me holding that 158 pound weight class was not good. I got an injury, and then I in 3 months I was 202. So
Oh wow.
yeah, I was sucking hard, and that's probably why I got injured.
Cutting
But
weight was very common back
oh
then.
yeah, yeah, it
It
was
was like,
nuts.
hey, you're supposed to like starve yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Today,
It's
some
actually
wrestlers
smarter.
still do it. Yeah,
Yeah, I like this. I'll tell you, I always did better when I didn't cut weight.
of
So,
course.
um, and so I got into martial arts at the school. It's called Bondo, or they call it American Lethway.
Hmm.
Um, Dr. Mung Ji, he's still around. He's out of Ohio. So I got into the full contact kickboxing, and Pat Finley was my direct instructor, and then we started doing Arnis and Kali with Dan Inosanto. So
Oh yes.
yeah, I got certified by Dan in like '84 or something.
Hmm.
So we did training with him. He'd come out, we'd go to California, whatever. But I did most of it through Pat Finley, and then when I moved back to Jersey and I left Maryland, I started training with this group of guys. They were all like AAU champs and everything in
Yep.
Taekwondo and karate. Bill Timmey, Mike Evangelo, Rich Faustini, all those guys. I got in with them. And then eventually I went and put my own school together. And I opened that up in 1988.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had my school from 88 until 2020 when COVID hit.
Right.
Um, and then I tried it in other years. I shut my gym. I moved to another gym, and I sold my building. I moved to another gym, and then they shut that next year. So I'm like, I'm just doing one-on-ones and doing my virtual stuff.
Yeah.
So and now I'm doing a lot of seminars. I'm going all over the place. I don't know if you
Really?
see. Yeah, yeah. I got. I'm involved in a couple different organizations right now, and my body bell method is not
Hmm.
only recognized by a bunch of uh, certifying organizations like ACE, NASM, so forth, AFF, AFAA, AAI, a whole bunch of them. But it's the only such course that's recognized in the state of New Jersey for continuing education credits for doctors of physical therapy
Oh, nice.
and chiropractors now. So
Wow.
yeah, so I'm doing certifications on my own and also through ICE. That's the Institute for Continuing Education.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah, I got another one coming up on August 14th. It's just an hour one, and then I got another one, a full blown certification in October. And in fact, I'm going to be out in Anaheim. I'm teaching a certification at the UFC gym in Anaheim on
Yep.
August 1st, and then second and third both days for Fit Expo. I don't know if it's pretty huge. There's I'm center stage on both those days, and look, I'm sure not everyone's going to be watching me, but there's going to be 21,000 people there at the show. Yeah, huge. Yeah, I'm thinking about bringing Nicky out with me, and then probably Frank Shamrock. We try to get him to show up. Um, I've been working with him. Yeah, I've known Frank. Yeah, I think for a long,
Of
long time.
course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and actually, I just heard from Dr. Mark Chang.
Of course.
Yeah,
California.
actually, yeah, he's actually coming. We connected.
Yes.
He's coming, so it'd be good to see him. He's like, "You'll be here," and I'm like, "Yeah, come on." So he's coming. If people don't know him, that guy's amazing. He's fantastic, and he had that whole Tai Chi workout thing
Yeah.
on. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and then I got a bunch of other books. Those are just the ones that are coming up in the next month or two. But yeah, I'm already booked into November already. So
Very good. So no more, you don't have a facility anymore.
no, just I'm doing my garage training.
Yep. You
Yeah,
know, a lot of
garage.
times I say, man, I'll just go back to the garage one day for
I
more
love
like
it.
for kind of the purity of it. But
Yeah.
I remember Bert Soren saying a long time ago,
Mhm.
he's like, in the 90s, if you wanted to learn from a strength coach, he's like, there would be like a world-class guy just training somebody out of his garage
Yep.
with nothing but like a bar and bumper plates. He's like, that's how they did it. And
Yeah.
when I was younger, I would say
Mhm.
this would have changed my life, but I didn't have the mentality.
Mhm.
Was my grandparents, when they were alive, they lived in Israel,
Oh
and
wow.
they had known of this guy in town. They just called him Andre the Giant. His name was Andre, but long
Yeah.
story short, he was on the junior weightlifting team for Romania, the national
Wow.
team.
Yeah.
And my father also left Romania during communism. They were the same age. And he was a competitive weightlifter. And he had the downstairs of his house was like all these bodybuilding machines, but
Yeah.
in the corner was a squat stand and his Olympic bar and bumpers. He cut out the ceiling so he could go overhead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look, this is 1989. And I always say,
Yeah.
man, my whole performance in sport and life would have changed if I would have understood how to be coached by him
Yeah.
and said to him, I'll sleep on this gym floor.
Right.
I'll train twice a day, three times a day. But he didn't want to, he tried correcting me in an exercise and I left and I was
Oh
like
wow.
crying. And so my brother just didn't even care. I'm like outside of the gym, he stays in there. But as a coach, somebody like us, we understand this. We'd go and say, hey, man, come in, let me show you how to train.
Yep.
But he's like, you don't want to be here? Get the F out of here.
Yep.
It didn't matter. But I say, oh, man, 1989 to learn
Yeah.
weightlifting. I didn't know anything except for what I read in Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding.
Great
And
book, by the
so,
way. But
such a great book. I
yeah.
also talk about that book because of not just learning so many different exercises,
Mhm.
but he understood a training atmosphere, training
Oh
environment,
yeah.
training partners, the mind muscle connection, the importance of atmosphere in a gym. And
Hmm.
there's a
Hmm.
lot of stories in between, but I also
Yes.
think that people don't read, Phil.
No.
So they
No.
might open that book and just look at all the pages. Whereas I used to devour those books
I
and
ate
read
that up
them over and
and
over.
over again. Yep,
So
yep.
when like when Arnold had a documentary that came out a few years ago, somebody was like, "Have you seen it?" I was like, "Yep, I saw it." But I already knew all of those
All of it.
stories
Yep.
because I read his Education of a
As a bodybuilder.
Bodybuilder every day
Yep,
in high school for about 3 years straight. I
yep.
memorized everything he did. And I think to be great at something, to be
Mhm.
great at kettlebells and body weight and martial arts, it requires full immersion and
Yes,
obsession. And I
yes.
think today there's a whole lot of for example, you were mentioning just like powerlifting or something. Jim
Yeah.
Wendler always says, "Hey, my program's simple, 5-3-1." He's like, "But I can't really help you if you're on 5-3-1 and then you're doing a little bit of this method and that and this." He's like, "You're no longer on really one training plan
Right,
because
right.
you want to do, this like
Yeah,
sampler." He's like, "Nobody gets strong that way."
no, no. You see, the things that when I got totally immersed into the kettlebells, I mean, I would still say I'm obsessed. I'm actually in love with these things because of what they've done for me and what how I've been able to help other people with it as well. But when you say you get immersed, I mean, I feel very connected, almost spiritual with
Yes.
my kettlebell and bodyweight training.
Yes.
That's the way I approach it. And like when I first got into kettlebells, people don't realize like how much it cost and what I sacrificed for it because I was asked to be an assistant right after I did my first one because I scored pretty well.
Hmm.
And so as an assistant back then, you tested every time you went.
That's right.
Yep.
You
So
had to
before
earn
you
your
had to
way to be
earn
a
it
coach.
right. And I would do it 3 to 4 times a year. I'd go on my own out of my own pocket, on my own dime
That's right.
until
You
I
paid your way.
yep, until I became a team leader. Then I got paid. And I got to be a team leader fairly rapidly because I did the level two, then I did the functional movement with
Oh,
Ravenclaw.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, I got that, and then I became a team leader because they saw me. I mean, I was there 3, 4 times a year, going to these 3 day, 4 day seminars.
They didn't do that. By the way, that seminar was, didn't you start Friday and then you did or it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
3 to 4 days?
Thursday night you met, and then you did first thing Friday
Friday.
morning. You test your snatch test.
Yes.
Yeah, and then went forward from there. So.
And so think about this, Phil. I have certifications and I
Mhm.
really stopped doing in-person certifications because it used to be Saturday, Sunday,
Right.
you know, um, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., sometimes later.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then it was like, I can't, it's too much. I can't travel. I can't get away. So then it was like Sunday is a half day.
Hmm.
Then I did a 1 day certification.
Hmm.
Listen, the reality is I just started watering it down. And I was
Yeah.
just like, I'm tired of trying to convince people to make this trip. Or
Yeah.
they would come out and say, listen, I'm just gonna watch. My this hurts, my that hurts. And I can't be around that. That is
Yeah.
the reality.
Right.
It's good that we're having this conversation,
Yeah.
but that
Yeah.
RKC was
Hmm.
several days.
Yep.
You're probably gone for 4 days because you
4
got to
days.
fly,
Easy. Yep.
you got to call
Yep.
out of work sick. You're doing things that you're calling out of work sick, but you're not sick. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Back then, there was really a full-time trainer, full-time coach was not really much of a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It was
I was at that time, but
it
yeah,
was very rare,
very rare. Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very rare.
I was
Uh,
running my gym. I had my martial arts, my kettlebells, my one-on-ones. I mean, honestly, I was putting in 80 hours a week was a slow week.
yep, the
Yeah.
the amount of work a coach put in back then, the business knowledge was not at all available
No.
back then at
Yep.
all.
I did it all. I figured it out on my own. Yeah.
What's kettlebell training look like for you now, Phil? Being in your 60s, has anything changed in the past 10, 15, especially
Okay.
looking back to
Yeah.
like almost
Yeah.
20 years ago, that was some brutal training.
I'll tell you honestly, I still hit it hard. I mean, I'm doing overhead uh, lunges
Yeah,
with the 32 for sets of 5
damn.
in my workout. I'm still doing a get, even though I had shoulder surgery a little while ago.
What
I'm
did you
still
have done?
about you name it. Years of abuse, labrum, rotator cuff,
Oh, you did a full
bicep rotate.
repair.
Yeah, four things. Bone spurs. The thing that was killing me was the bone spurs because they kept sawing through the tendons. But I'm doing on my bad side. I just got the 40 kg. No problem with the get up.
Jeez.
No
Why
problem.
do you like the get up so much? What's your favorite things about it?
Wow. Where do you want to start? You have a press, you have a lunge, you have a hip hinge, the stability, the time under tension. You're just think about it. If you're in wrestling, you get all put in all kinds of crazy positions, right? So now I'm getting strength at every single one of these positions. I'm
Yeah,
going bang, bang, and I hold it. I hold it for a breath. I do reps there, so forth. It's just that the if sometimes I'll just do a workout where I just do get ups and swings. I just kill it, just do set upon set, and I get a decent amount of volume in. But then also, I have my hit workouts too. Depends on the day what I want to do. I
yeah.
change it around, but I make sure. I'll tell you, I always do my armbar, side press, the lying side press, and the kettlebell pullover. I do that routine at least once a week because of the mobility and the strength that I get throughout my whole body.
So you do
Uh,
the arm bar.
the lying side press
Yep.
and the kettlebell pullover. That's one of my staple warm ups. I do that at least once a week. The arm bar is so fantastic for you.
Yes,
And that's how I got this 74-year-old guy to be able to do a get up. Dude, most people 75 can't even get up out of a chair on their own.
that's right.
This guy's getting up off the floor with a weight over his head. It's
Yeah.
nuts.
Do you remember, we mentioned Jeff Martone
Yeah.
earlier. I was
Yeah.
driving through Tennessee coming home last week from
Mm-hmm.
Georgia, and I was thinking about Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
So I texted him, and then it made me think about he used to do the kettlebell juggling.
Yeah.
Today we see people juggling like an 8 pound kettlebell. I
Right.
saw him
Right.
doing a 53 with his eyes closed. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, whipping that thing
Yeah.
around. And then
Yeah.
as I've gotten tighter, I said, man, I'm going to remember when Jeff came out with the shot put, the
Mm-hmm.
8 pound D ball,
Mm-hmm.
just moving the hands, hand
Mm-hmm.
speed,
Mm-hmm.
juggling it behind the back, good for shoulder rotation. I purchased another one because I love training outside. I always say, if
Yes.
I, when I was in Georgia, I visited Play. They make
Mm-hmm.
strength training equipment,
Mm-hmm.
flooring, and I was talking with one of the guys who was kind of like he was doing their sales and
Yeah.
for the home gym.
Mm-hmm.
I said, does it rain a lot in Georgia? I said, because my ultimate home gym is I would be outside.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't want my gym in the garage. And if
Mm-hmm.
I was living somewhere where it didn't rain a lot, my squat rack would be outside
Outside. Yep.
and I want to train in
Mm-hmm.
the
The
nature,
elements. Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
elements. I think
Yeah.
it's more connecting. And when you were talking about no music when running, I remember I used to help out at Blair Academy when Coach
Mm-hmm.
Buxton was there,
Oh yeah.
and that was I think that was like pre 2010.
Mm-hmm.
But they do one home match a year, at least they
Mm-hmm.
did back then. And they had this awesome like big screen, and it was kind of like a little documentary on all the wrestlers.
Yeah.
And they were interviewing, Coach Buxton. He's like, sometimes when we wrestle, we listen to their music. He's like, which I think is not really music at all. He's like, sometimes we listen to my music, which they're not a fan of. And he's like, but you know what the best music is? No music. He's like,
Yeah.
hearing your feet moving on the mat, listening, hearing your heart, literally hearing
Right.
your heartbeat.
Thank you.
He's like,
100%.
that is the best music.
Absolutely.
And I thought that was really powerful.
That is. That is.
Yeah.
It's because Zach, we definitely have to do this again because I think we just
Yes.
we just tapped on the tip of the iceberg here.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm seeing all different ways we can go. But is there anything you want to say to the ladies?
Just want to thank you for having me on. If they want to catch up with what we do, they could. We have Strong Life Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a ton of videos on my YouTube and Instagram. If they just Google search Underground Strength Gym,
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll come across a lot of information and they could kind of dig into the world of that I do from there. But thank you for having me on, Phil.
Oh, my pleasure. All right, guys, thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. Strength and honor.
Yes.